Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Barclay, founder of Barclayss. Today we'll be going through our next webinar, which is the Next Generation Leadership Diagnostic. We ran one of these before, which was really just an introduction to the diagnostic tool. Today we're going to take the opportunity to really dig into one of the key practices, which is commitment. And the process for today, we'll go through some quick introductions with our host. So we'll hear from Ash, we'll hear from Sasha. And what we'll do is allow people to use the chat function. You can go to chat, you can put your questions in there. Throughout the session, we're going to ask you for some of your ideas and your opinions, so you can use the chat function and we can look at that as we go. There's also a poll later on, so you'll have to wait for the poll to come up and work your way through that poll as well. But that's a chance for you to interact and give us some feedback around certain questions and certain attributes around commitment. So at the end, we'll deal with all the questions at the end. We'll take the time to work out who's the best person to give you those responses, and we'll get into it. So I'll quickly hand over to Sasha to introduce herself.
Hello everybody, great to be here this morning. You'll hear from me in a little while. So yes, my name is Sasha. I've got a background in organisational psychology and I've been part of the research team behind the Leadership Diagnostic Tool that we're going to talk about today. So I'll be giving you some more background information about the research behind commitment, one of the 4 intentional states. So that all of that makes sense to everybody, Ash is going to kick us off today, so I'll hand over to Ash to get into it all and explain what commitment's all about and how it really fits with the work that you're all doing in the workplaces. So over to you, Ash.
Thanks, Sasha. Thanks, John. Good to be here and glad to be able to share some of the information with you guys today, and really keen to hear some of your questions as well, and also your comments. So a little bit of background from me. So my name is Ash Hunt. I still run a company called Prime, or Prime Corporate Psychology. Some people may have heard of that. For over a decade at least, we were doing critical incident response work. So most large industrial organisations or mining companies, oil and gas companies had a relationship with us. And so if, when things went terribly wrong, we would be on the other end of the phone and mobilise a team of psychologists and deployed within usually 20 minutes to a site or to the family's home and try and deal with that horrendous situation. So you can imagine for a long period of time doing that, myself and my team got very passionate and committed to trying to figure out what it's going to take to prevent workplace injuries, and in particular serious injuries and fatalities. So I'm going to just start with the objective. So if you just have a read through there, as John mentioned, we already did a sort of a broad introduction to the inventory that the diagnostic tool that we're going to talk about today. I'll read there that today is actually focusing more on your commitment. And this is an area, this is the first of the intentional states. So there's 4 intentional states. Sasha will give you a bit more information about that. This is the first one. And this is one that I'm particularly interested in due to a lot of those experiences that I just shared with you a moment ago. So we're going to kick off with a pop quiz. So pop quiz, I think I'm asking 3 questions in a row here, Sash, is that right? So you'll see there's a poll. Can you read that there, folks? You've got a couple of choices. So go ahead and fill your answers in. In reality, there will always be some workplace injuries because of human factors and things beyond our control, like Mother Nature. Second question at the end of the day, things like production, seen as higher priorities than safety. And then there's a third question.
Safety should be our #1 priority.
Yeah, safety should be our #1 priority. So I think that should be on your screen for you to be able to click through and answer. How are we going with that, Sash? Is it? Yeah.
6 responses.
6, yeah, cool, okay, good. All right, so here we go. Here's the responses that have come through so far. Hopefully you can see that screen as well. So bit of a spread there. 33% saying they disagree, 17% neutral, 50% say they agree that there will always be some workplace injuries. Second question, 67% say that they agree that at the end of the day, things like production are seen as higher priorities than safety. And the third one, you can see there, well, 83%. So I'm not sure about the maths there, where there's 83, 17 and 17, that seems to be slightly higher than 100. But anyway, you get the message that most people seem to think that that third commitment statement is more important, or more effective. So it's actually, that's what we're going to dive into. That's why we needed to develop this tool, because what we're going to talk about really is, if you ask, I've asked a lot of people this question, especially a lot of leaders, how committed are you, mate? How committed really are you to creating a safe workplace? You know what? Every time the answer's the same. And you know what the answer is? They say 100% committed. Okay, no one's going to get hurt on my watch, Ash, right? So given that, you'd think, well, surely the first of the intentional states, it should be a tick, right? But it's not. Now, research shows why it's not. All right, now, this was quite a learning experience for me, and I hope it is for you too. And it's sure as heck will be for most people who ever complete this ISA inventory. So as you can see on the screen there, the ISA 360 is an individual inventory. It's really diving into, at an individual level, 4 intentional states, first one being commitment. So let's have a look at that. If you think there's a commitment from a 0 to 10, right? 0, low effective, 10, highly effective. Now, there's a difference between in commitment, what it's measuring, quite a few different things, but one is the difference between your desire, right? You don't want anyone to get hurt, right? And a belief. And the belief could be, oh, yeah, but accidents are inevitable. What do you think, mate? We're working on some pretty dangerous things. So the difference between the want and the belief is going to cause behaviours that are going to put people in harm's way. So I want to look at a couple of additional things here. One is some common beliefs that you'll hear. Things like, yeah, mate, some things are beyond our control. She'll be right, mate. How many times have you heard that? Hey, can I give you a hand with that? She'll be right, mate. I've got it. How many times do you hear that? I mean, I'm a bit of a, I've got room to improve in that one myself. It won't happen to me, etc. So these are some beliefs that we have that are incongruent with our commitment to not get hurt or not have anyone else hurt. Right? So what the tool does is it actually brings out what the beliefs are that are mostly unconscious. Right? They're mostly sort of sitting below, a little bit beneath our awareness. It brings them out and it helps us to explore then, are they enough to match our intention or our desire or our want with the impact that we create? And that's the key bit. So unless, one, we have a really solid, effective commitment, now we're going to have a look at what we all think, well, 83% think was a pretty good commitment, safety first. Right? We're going to have a look at that and go, hang on, is that enough? And what happens if we actually, where's that 0 to 10? We're going to have a look at that now. Firstly, production is king. So often, on a lot of the experience that I've been through, when you really get down and dirty with the guys and you go, come on, tell me, what's it really like here? I go, meters, mate. You've got to get the meters. So production is king, whilst common, it's actually anticipated to cause some really good things. No one's deliberately going out there, as we've already talked about, to hurt people. So production is king is usually, if you think about it, it's intended to cause higher production, higher company profits, ability to then have more training, better equipment, etc., right? Therefore, more safe workplaces, right? But the actual impact of production is king is what some of the things that you might think of. So John and Sash, because this is a Zoom meeting, these guys are going to help out with answering some of these. You would have seen and worked in environments where production is king.
Yeah, so teamwork will generally increase because people are trying to get the job done and work more effectively. Innovation can increase as well.
Yep, absolutely. And what are some of the other unintended impacts of production as king?
Probably the most obvious one we think about is start taking shortcuts.
Okay,
Not doing it the right way.
Yeah. Workarounds, rushing. We've got to just keep this thing online. So innovate in other ways.
Sometimes preventative maintenance doesn't get done because
Exactly
we're running.
Exactly right. So it can cause what the research talks about as a reactionary or reactive culture. And reactive cultures are the lowest performing of all of the levels of culture maturity in organisations. Production is king, when it's all said and done, actually reduces production. And it actually reduces quality, and it also, in our, one of our core passions is safety. It actually reduces safety performance. So when the tool, when people go through this particular process, so just to flick back here, the I ask tool is actually measuring teams or divisions or whole organisations' views about commitment and about their culture and how things actually roll in that particular team. So when a whole team gets present to the idea that production is king, doesn't actually even increase production, it reduces it, then their customers can want to change. So John will probably talk a bit more about that later. Okay, safety first. Now, 83%, give or take 17% with the maths there, said, yeah, look, question 3, safety first should be a number 1 priority, that sort of thing. It may be news for people that the belief or the commitment, safety first, kills people. Okay. Pretty big statement. Well, why? Why does that happen? Because, of course, there's so many businesses around and big number of tier 1 companies that will say safety is their number 1 priority, safety first, right? So it's got to have a lot of anticipated benefits, the first being safety, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't work. So why not? Let's get a few ideas why this commonly stated commitment doesn't actually work very, very effectively.
So if anyone can see your chat function, jump on in and respond. Let us know why don't you think this commitment actually works?
So just while you're typing, while you're typing, that's a couple of.
Louise has said priorities can change, so safety needs to be a core value rather than a priority.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Is there any others? I think I saw another. John, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so safety first can be quite sceptical for people because we're always trying to manage the balance between production and safety. So when we say safety first, it can create a bit of scepticism.
Yep. Yeah, so everyone's on the lookout, that 1 in 10 times, and you go, look at that.
Safety wasn't first.
That wasn't first, so the whole thing's a lot of rubbish. Absolutely. Any other thoughts coming through, Sash? Okay, so let's have a look at it. Couple of real experiences here. Some of you may have worked on or been present in or worked in similar situations where companies have been very, very determined that safety's first. Here's sometimes how it rolls. There's a cyclone. It's not within Kui of the island, right, that we happen to be working on. But what happens? Oh, safety's first. Okay, we better down tools. We better get into the trip room, right, and just wait. Okay, there's some hand injuries. Right, safety first, blanket rule across the entire business now. Every time you get out of the vehicle, you must wear gloves. That doesn't make sense. Give it safety first, right? Safety gets drilled down people's throats to the point where a coach like myself can come along and go, right, and they go, what are you doing here, Ash? I'm here to help you guys be more safe and more effective. Safety, more safety stuff, mate. Wow, it's rammed down our throats. Right? Okay, well, that's not our intention. Right? Now, what happens to schedule when there's a safety first? culture, well, it gets really jammed up. And human nature and all kinds of other factors like contracts and all sorts of other things, people go, what am I going to do? We better not drop too far behind schedule. Let's rush, let's cut corners, let's do all those things. But yeah, but hang on, if there's an incident, safety's first, right? What are we going to do? We better not mention that. We better hide some of that stuff because it might create even more dramas. We'll be back in that crib room in a minute.
Or blame someone who didn't put safety first.
Or exactly right, create a witch hunt, blame someone. Or even worse, go far out. The policies mustn't be enough for people to follow. Safety first, let's write another policy, John.
Another one.
So they end up pretty massive. What do you get? You get a conforming culture, which is the second last in the culture maturity model. So folks, you're probably going, what the hell then would be an integral level or a high performer? What's a 10 out of 10 or something like that? Maybe we're still discovering that. What would a 10 out of 10 effective commitment be that's actually dignified with action? And the answer is it's holding all of those things together. It's holding the fact that if we're not financially sustainable, we don't have a playground to even be safe, right? So we've got to be financially sustainable. We've got to hold that. We've got to hold that we look after ourselves, that we do this job safely. We've got to hold the fact that quality is important to us, right? Our environment, sustainability, all of that, we've got to hold it together because it's not in competition, right? Now that kind of commitment is one that leads to actions, and then those actions are ones that lead to a high-performing culture. Okay, and the outcomes that we need. So there was a group who really got this, and they created a poster, and they said they used to have production's king, the funny team, so they said, let's make a big poster and it says, rest in peace, production's king is dead, and instead they've got Elvis up there that they've now all signed and said, safe, sustainable production is king for us, right? Now that's those folk are in the process of transforming the way they do business from a reactive culture all the way through. They're currently in an achieving level, moving towards integral. They'll be doing a case study at the upcoming Australian Institute of Health and Safety National Conference, that particular organisation. So if you're interested in that, tune in for that one. All right, so there are all types of levels of commitment. Commitments, in order to be extraordinary, they cost a bit, right? They cost us because the second part of commitment is enrolling others inside your commitment. So you have to actually go to eyeball people and say, I believe it's possible for us to get this job done safely and effectively. I believe we can do this entire project without hurting anyone. I don't know what it's going to take, but together we're going to figure that out, right? That's the sort of extraordinary commitment that's required for us to actually have an awesome and an extraordinary workplace. So sometimes when we talk about, we have this, I don't want anyone to get hurt. No, not on my watch. When we have that kind of a commitment, we are genuine, I don't want anyone to get hurt. But what are you prepared to do about it? You know, because if the actions don't dignify that commitment, it doesn't work. So an acid test, something that's really worth thinking about is, hey mate, what if your loved one, what if your kid's life depended on you getting this particular project delivered on time safely? Are you going to do anything different? And the answer to that question that I've always heard is, hell yes. And then we go, what are you going to do differently? It's a way to just bring out some people's awareness as to actually they're saying that they're committed, but they're not actually playing as if they are committed. So I think without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sash, who's going to actually talk to you a bit more about the science behind the inventories or the diagnostics that we created. Over to you, Sash.
Thanks, Ash. All right, so hopefully by now your head's scratching a little bit around your commitment to safety and what it actually means for you, and also what your organisation's commitment is. What statements, what safety first type statements have you been articulating as an organisation? And yeah, how has your view on that shifted already? Now, all of those things are really important. We talk a lot about views, and Ash also mentioned that there's some capabilities and some behaviours as well. What we're articulating with the two tools we're here today to talk about is that there are things that leaders need to impact at an individual and organisational level. And there are also things that leaders need to impact that we can see and that we can't see in order to have an effective impact on both safety and performance. So let's break that down a little bit further. At the individual level, we've got a number of different ways leaders can impact safety and performance in ways of what we can see. So in other words, leaders can change behaviours of other people. So through their communication, the way they give instructions, their work orders, they can change the behaviour of others to encourage them to work more safe and effectively. Now, what we've found in the research is it's not just in changing behaviour. Improving safety and performance isn't just about behavioural change, because all well and good for people to behave in a certain way when a leader's there. But when a leader's not there, if the people or the workforce don't have a belief in why they're behaving that way, they're going to stop doing it. And so it's really important for a leader to also have an impact on people's beliefs, values and attitudes that sit behind their behaviours. Now that's just at the individual level, and a highly effective leader will be able to work with both of those areas. If you really want to make a difference though in an organisation in terms of safety and performance, a leader also needs to have an impact at an organisational level. So it's not just about working within their team or their crew, it's also about how can I influence organisational systems, the interconnected network of the organisation that impact on both safety and performance. And how can I influence the collective belief, value or attitudes, also known as culture? Now, who knows how we actually do that, but the very first place to start is understanding, well, what is the current situation? What is our baseline? What's an empirical, independent way of understanding the individual impact and the organisational impact on both safety and performance? And so the two tools that really underpin everything that we do, and also that has informed our longitudinal research, are the two tools we're talking about here today. So the ISA 360. The ISA 360 is at an individual level. It's looking at individual capability to influence both the invisible and the visible, the beliefs and the behaviours of other people. At the organisational level, we're looking at the IASK. So at a whole organisational level, what are the collective views, the collective belief, in other words, culture, and how effective are the systems and the interconnectedness of those in terms of impacting safety and performance? Now, for anyone in an organisation to actually make a difference in these areas, you've got to start with an inquiry. What does it actually look like first? What's the current situation? And these two tools can give you that information. Now, I personally really like how these two tools are able to collect really rich data that's reliable and valid, that enable us to conduct a number of different research experiments to come up with some conclusions. And that's what I'm really here to talk to you today about. What have we actually found from the data we've collected? If you're interested though in the actual tools themselves, John's going to follow me today, and he's going to talk further about how they actually work in a more coaching mindset. And if you've got any questions about the specific tools themselves, you can get in touch with him after today. So the four intentional states, you've heard a lot about commitment already today. Commitment is an individual's commitment to safety, as well as their ability to engage other people in that same safety commitment. There are three other intentional states that we covered in our last webinar, for those of you that weren't able to tune into that one. The second one being curiosity. So a leader's ability to listen to a range of different people, the right people, with genuine curiosity, which is, in other words, is an interest to seek to understand the real objective current situation to be able to improve things. Thirdly, caring actively. The genuine belief in the possibility of people going home safely, that it's worth putting the extra effort in to get home safely, and that we actually care about our colleagues. And lastly, interconnectedness. So our ability to not just watch our own patch, but to have an influence on the interconnected nature of organisations. How can I make systemic, interconnected change throughout the organisation? So rather than just complaining about that particular department or putting something in and realising it takes so long to get resolved, actually working proactively in the interconnected nature of organisations. So to be high performing as a leader, you really need to be high performing in all 4 of these. And we've got a series of other webinars after today where we're going to focus on each of the other 3. As we've mentioned already though, today's all about commitment. It all starts with commitment. So as Ash articulated, commitment is both having that personal commitment and integrity to commitment. So genuinely, not just saying safety first or it's really important to me, but genuinely believing in the importance of holding safety as a core value, just like you mentioned, Louise. And also engaging other people in that commitment, so demonstrating that behaviour and engaging others in the process. There's really 2 key parts to this intentional state. So what we've found so far, we've been conducting longitudinal research for a while, over 2 years now, and collected data from a number of different leaders, not just safety leaders, but leaders who have an impact on safety throughout organisations. And what we've found is the lowest performing item that sits within commitment from a feedback perspective, so when other people are getting 360-degree feedback about their behaviour, is communicates the reasoning behind safety. So in other words, leaders aren't effectively communicating the reasoning behind safety. They're not sharing the why. They might behave safely, they might acknowledge someone for performing safely, but they're not articulating the reason behind safety, why it's important to them. And so there's a real opportunity for leaders to get a shift in that space. Now, Ash mentioned a number of different commitments, a number of different beliefs we might have in regards to safety. Now, what we've also done in our inventory and what the ISA 360 also picks up and measures is the impact of our leadership. So it's not just the 4 intentional states, it also picks up on, well, how do the staff that report to that leader feel? How engaged they feel? How do they behave? And what we've done here is basically lined up from our research sample all those leaders in terms of their impact. So we've looked at their impact. We've got over on the far end at the 3, this is obviously a standard distribution curve for those of you who are interested. So it's been normalised, and so people over in the 3 are the really high performing people, the ones that have a really positive impact, down to the -3 being a really low performing impact. So what we did, we lined everyone up in terms of their impact, and then we've randomly selected someone from each area of the curve to understand what is their commitment. So we asked the question of these people, those people that have a company policy or a company value or belief of zero harm. We asked them the question, do you believe it's possible to achieve zero harm? Someone down this end, so someone that had a low leadership impact said this, no. Having such a large number of employees, it's highly unlikely. Traffic accidents make it difficult as people outside the organisation make an impact. Now, this is a bit of a head scratcher again, because some of you might be like, well, yeah, traffic accidents do make it difficult as people outside the organisation do impact on our safety records and our ability to achieve zero harm. Yet it's that commitment that what we've found out limits people's behaviour, their performance in the intentional states, and ultimately creates a low leadership impact. All right, what about, the vast majority of us that sit in the middle? Here's one, and I've taken this verbatim, so apologies, it's a bit of a long one here. I'm not sure that it's achievable simply due to the human factor that comes into play. There are factors that we have no control over, nor can we completely eliminate, such as age and body condition. However, while I feel this is this way, I think it's completely reasonable and fully supports striving towards 000. If we didn't, I feel as though we project an idea that we think it's okay to hurt people or put people at risk. So as you can see, looking at that one, there's a bit of an on the fence mentality, which, to be honest, I believe the majority of us leaders sit within that fence sitting space. And what the research is showing is there's a real opportunity to have a more positive impact on others. So let's look at what one of the more positive impact on others might actually look like.
You'll need to click back on screen here.
Oh, sorry. There we go. All right, I believe it is. No one in the business is coming to work to injure themselves or others. I believe people genuinely are looking to use our safety processes and procedures to keep aiding keeping themselves and work colleagues safe. Now, it's hard because we might read something like that and go, yeah, but what about these things? And that's the difference. And that's where Ash was talking about, you know, what if your child's or loved one's life depended on it? It's amazing when it really matters to us, when we have that core belief that's reflected in commitment, what we're able to do and how we adjust our leadership style to have a more positive impact. And what the research has shown is that people that have a more positive impact actually create, you know, actually start with a belief, something like this. All right, so how to get there, how to transform from where most of us sit in that mediocre middle performance, how to transform into having more of a positive or high performance impact on other people. It all starts with coaching. It doesn't come naturally to us. As you can see, most people start in the middle there. So how do you create that? And John's going to walk us through a strategy and some options in terms of how to actually do that for yourselves and for your organisation through coaching. So there you go, no worries.
Thank you. Well, thanks Ash and Sasha. It's really good to get the insight to what the tool's actually doing, because the tool is designed to give us the information we need to be able to reflect on the impact we're having with people. Now, the role of coaching in any of these sorts of processes is to have someone independently work through that process with you. Because fundamentally, when we look at any information or any feedback, we have those internal beliefs or drivers that hinder us to be able to accept what's possible. So the whole point of coaching is for someone to talk you through those beliefs and those intentions, and as well as some of the behaviours that come with that, and the impact that those are having, and actually explore the whole picture rather than just grab hold of our bias, which is grounding on the key things that we are intentionally trying to create, and therefore then people accept that this belief and this behaviour is good because I get this intention. And you can see from the conversation we had with Ash earlier that even with a production is king belief, there's some good intent, there's some good impacts that come with that. So we can hold on to that and just justify that just by those and not necessarily think about some of the unintentional impacts of that. Same with safety first, or safety as a priority. Again, we can look at all the good intentions of that and the good impacts of that, but a coach's job is to broaden the horizon and really get you to think, okay, what is the real impact here and what am I learning from all of this feedback? So how do we do that? Sitting down with a coach, when you get your results and you get your feedback, is going through a process of reflection. So viewing our current beliefs and our current intentions and getting a real understanding of what's sitting there and what behaviours are they driving. So how do I now, based on those beliefs and based on those values and that intent, how does my behaviour come across? All right, and we consider the way we feel and the way we behave in that moment. We then explore, okay, based on that, what are my intended outcomes? What's the intended result I'm doing as a part of that? Because, as we said before, there are intentional outcomes we're getting from any belief that is value. But also we need to start to explore some of the unintended impacts. And that's where the coach really comes in. You start to really broaden your horizon to go, hey, I didn't really consider that that was an outcome of me behaving that way. So let me talk through a bit of a simple example here. So we talked a bit about safety as a priority. So that's my belief, and that's something, that's my intention, and that's my, what I'm holding on to. So because of that belief, my behaviour could be, or the belief that builds off that could be that, well, if people just follow the rules and people just follow the process, then safety would be great, and safety would be first, and safety would be working. So what we end up doing then with that safety first, follow the rules, the behaviour from me then can be a couple of things. One, projecting to people make sure you've got your JHA, make sure you've got your Take 5, make sure you've got your SOP, whatever tools you use, make sure you've got those to do your job. Right? So we haven't talked about anything that could hurt us. We haven't talked about anything that's really valuable to control our exposures. We've actually just said make sure the paperwork's right. What's the second behaviour that comes from a leader with an intent like that when they go in the field? They just go spend time looking at the paperwork. So, what's the JHA say? Have you got your Take 5? Have you got a permit? We focus on the paperwork. So what's the intended outcome of that? Is we're really compliant. We've got really good paperwork. People are following the paperwork. It looks really good when we go through an audit process and everything looks really rosy and everyone's really happy. But what some of the unintended results of that is people feel like we don't actually care about them, that safety is actually not important, it's just the paperwork, and it's a tick and flick, and that's the unintended outcome of those. So it comes from that belief right at the start, safety is a priority, so I need to enforce it, or I need to create a process around it, and processes are important, so therefore then the behaviour starts to get some changes. So when we go through those types, it's about then getting the leader to acknowledge and recognise what level of state are they operating in. Are they creating a reactive state because production's king? Are they creating a conforming state because procedures are the most important thing? Are they creating an achieving state because our people are the most important thing? Or are they in the integral state, which means everything's connected and we've got to learn from everything and piece everything together? So the reality of going through that on your own is we would all go, I know I'm not quite there at integral, but I'm definitely achieving. You know, because I'm doing all these intentional things that are getting really good outcomes. Look at our audit scores, they're doing really good. Look at our safety performance, it is trending down, so things are working. But we're not actually necessarily digging deep into what's the actual belief systems within our team, what's our actual values driving those processes. And as we said before, safety versus a priority can actually should be a value. So that then drives a slightly different behavioural approach. So as you see, we get the results, we dig into the commitment, and we'll focus just on commitment for now, and we dig into all the attributes that sit under commitment. So not only my own commitment, but the way I engage others around their commitment, and we look at what's the best opportunity to actually leverage that. And it could be, as Sasha quite rightly said, the most common one we seem to talk about with leaders in a coaching framework is how do they better articulate their why? How do they get better at actually communicating with people around what's really driving the safety focus within them? And when you peel back that belief of safety as a priority, if you actually start to peel that back, it's generally because they don't want to hurt anyone and they don't want anyone to be hurt on their watch, right? So there is a genuine belief under there that I talk about it being, they've just put a surface over it to make it easier to talk about, as safety is our number one priority, because there's not a lot of disclosure in that, there's not a lot of openness and humility in that, and that's where people can actually start to change the way they communicate their why, which changes the way they behave, but it also changes the way they engage with people. So an example I had of this, and this is the value, and I guess the reason why I love coaching, is you get so many opportunities to work with leaders through this process. And as Ash said at the start, every time you talk to a leader, they've always got a genuinely good intention around safety. Like they do want safety to be done well, because they don't want people hurt. So the example I used before is the exact example I want to talk through now. I actually had a leader who, when I met them and I went through this process and I saw their results, they were very avoidant of them, right? They were very dismissive of it because they thought, no, safety is the number one priority for me. I don't compromise it for anything. It's the most important thing to me. And when we broke that up, that's what was happening for this person. The rules were the most important thing to them to get safety right, because that was the only thing he felt like he could control. Right? I can control the rules we have, how they're worded, how they're rolled out, how we communicate them with our team, how we enforce them. So for there, the behaviour became very rules orientated, and the unintended result of that, the feedback that we got through the process for this person was, I don't feel included. I don't feel like I'm valued. I don't feel like I can safely speak up. The person doesn't actually care about us, they're more worried about making sure the paperwork's fine. So there was a really big unintended impact here that the leader finally came to realise through the whole conversation with me as a coach, and just talking through that and actually helping them navigate those different situations and then stripping it right back to, all right, so if your belief, your genuine belief is you do value your people and you do value them to come to work and perform their work safely, if that's your value, then how do you articulate that differently? What does it look like differently when you actually genuinely go there? So, for example, a pre-start in the morning, before, what the leader was doing was basically standing up, demanding the team to go and make sure they've got their permits, make sure they've got their JHA, make sure they've got their take fives, do your 3 take fives a day, make sure you do all that. So it was very rule, task, paperwork focused. After going through this process of disclosure, it was really disengaging their team. What have we got on today? What are the key things we're going to need to manage? How are we going to manage those? How do we make sure that when we go do that work, we're going to do it safely and effectively? So the whole conversation changed to being one way to now being two-way, and actually having a genuine conversation with my crew, or his crew, because he was committed to the team, he was committed to the people, not just the procedures and the rules. So what started to happen then when the leader went out in the field, didn't even go to the paperwork. Didn't even go to the paperwork at all. Genuinely just went up and had a conversation with the crew and was asking the crew, how's the work going? What's happening? What's working? What's not working? What do you need from me? And all those questions started to come out, because when the commitment's right, the other state starts to kick in more effectively, which is curiosity. Because I'm generally committed to them being safe, so I'm now curious about how it's going. So they start to flow and they start to impact each other. So this leader went from standing up, demanding people, and had a team that was quite fearful, not speaking up, probably not reporting all the issues that were going on, probably not reporting all the hazards and the so-called near-miss incidents that occur while they're working, because their leader wasn't open, and the commitment from the leader was more about procedure and performance numbers rather than actually about the people. To see this team a year later, and to see the feedback that happened with this team a year later, was literally astounding to see how the team worked together, the way they actually started to put things in place. The leader was way more comfortable that they didn't have their take 5 every day, but that's okay. He could still see that the work was done really safely and the work was being done effectively. So the leader believed this team wanted to work safely. This team believed that they could do the work safely. So therefore then quite a few other behaviours started coming. He trusted his team more effectively. He actually started to communicate with his team more effectively. And that's the process of coaching, is to take you through that journey. Because if you do it on your own, most leaders go through the surface of it and don't dig into it and unpack it in a way that really helps them restructure it to be a totally new behaviour and a totally new way of performing. So I'm going to start handing over to some questions, but just to sum that up, for us, the most important thing is we've got a tool that actually allows people to get genuine feedback from their people, but also around the impact they're having with their people, around proven practices that are important for leaders. And it connects really quickly to the cultural maturity. So once you actually understand what leaders are doing and how leaders are behaving, you can then start to understand why are the teams functioning at a certain state, right? And then you can actually make those connections much more effectively. We can do this. Everyone gets a really good self-development guide, and all those 4 practices are in there. And the good thing about a guide like this, which is just purely part of the process, is there's a whole section just on commitment, right? So when you go through the commitment part, it actually helps you work through what are my commitments, what are my beliefs, how do I do that? And you do that with a coach, it's way more powerful, but you can do it yourself as well, and you can reflect on that. And then it goes through all the different attributes to that. I'll just find one here, and when you get to certain bits, you'll see there's QR codes that allow you to go to online videos and online content that gives you more information about how to be a more effective leader and how to demonstrate your commitment more effectively. So not only do you get good diagnostic, good feedback, good data, and if you sit down with a coach, someone to help you through that process, you actually get a self-development guide. And the self-development guide is where you can keep growing year on year on year, because there's a lot in that book and you wouldn't get through it very quickly. So you have to keep working your way through that. So As I was doing that, hopefully some people had some questions.
I was going to say there's a small number of people in the room. If you want to go off mute and video, if you have any questions, that way we can actually talk to you directly. Or I'm also monitoring the chat function. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat, or feel free to jump on in on your screen and we can have a conversation with you.
Be nice to see you.
So we're just bringing the screen up, so if anyone does want to talk, have a question, might not even be a question, it might just be a comment. It might be just something you want to articulate from what you've heard today, especially around the challenges of our commitment and how we articulate that with teams.
So far, Stephen said, great content, folks. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Hopefully got you thinking a bit about how you're reflecting on your commitment to safety and your commitment to your team, and how that's a values-based commitment. Thanks, Steve. Anyone else? All right. Just as people are contemplating that, I'm happy for people to come in. Just some final wrap-up points for our webinars. We will get the recording of this, and I'm just double checking it is still recording. We'll get the recording of this and send that out in a follow-up email so you can at least review it again in your own time. Also gives you a chance to maybe share it with others that you think would like to hear what we spoke about today. In that email, there will also be a link to our LinkedIn group, which allows you to join the private group and continue the conversation. So if you didn't get a chance to ask a question today, or you couldn't think of one today, but one comes up a bit later, you can pop it in that group. All our team, not just Sasha and Ash and myself, but all our team is in that group, and someone's bound to get online with you and have a chat through some of your questions around commitment or even around some of the other intentional states. So that email will have all the information you need for that. And as Sasha said, we're also going to be running follow-up webinars, one around curiosity, and then a follow-up one around actively caring, and then one around interconnectedness, and giving you a chance to really dig into those a bit deeper as well. So before we sign off, no other comments, no other questions? Cool.
I think just one comment, John. Well done with your with your talking about coaching and talking about how they interconnect. I think that's a really key bit because. For instance, if someone has a terrifically effective commitment, that can help with also caring actively.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that people really struggle with in the field, especially across teams, so if I'm in this crew and there's a crew over there, I can see there's something not quite right. It's like, oh, I don't want to get hurt. That'd suck. That's not my crew. It's not my crew. I do care. Caring actively it's as if it's your own family member. So the active part is you get yourself out of that, or you get yourself beyond the discomfort and grow a bit of courage to go over and say, hey guys, look, I'm just a bit concerned about how that's happening there. Can I have a chat? I just want, just really care about you being able to get that done safely. That takes a lot of courage for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we've had experiences where people have told us to, PO. And so a strong commitment then enables, and it flows on, as you said beautifully. Yeah. It's not just caring, it's caring actively. It's having the skills to actually go on into being.
Yeah. I would say the stronger the commitment, the stronger the courage becomes.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're really, really strong commitment to the value of safety and the safety of people, the ability to get the courage to go have a conversation with someone that's not your team, or even a really good example I had of this was someone I was talking to. Once they went through this process, they actually walked past a construction site and saw some people working at height, and because they had really processed, they actually stopped and went over and spoke to the foreman about what was happening there. So the commitment, once it's really unpacked and really people get to that foundational concept of what your value is and what your commitment is, the courage is still courage. You still have to build the courage, but you're more likely to grab hold of that and move forward.
Yeah, spot on.
Right.
Look, really look forward to any comments, questions, feedback. We're always curious and wanting to learn about how to be more effective in conveying some of this information. So give us some feedback, folks, and Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, John, for hosting
No, thank you.
webinar again.
Appreciate everyone coming online. Hopefully you got some value out of it. It's good to see some repeat people coming through. So obviously you're getting value through these different contents. So thanks again for coming on. Look forward to the next one. We'll talk to you all again soon. So thank you. See you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.